Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first ever 2026 Knowledge Exchange Series. My name is Dixon Odur, the communication specialist at GIZ. The Knowledge Series essentially is a platform for peer learning, exchanging ideas, lessons learned about so many issues that affect our work. This is an open platform where we can discuss freely and share so many ideas about a lot of things that concern what we are doing. And together in this platform, we are looking forward to impacting better on the work that we are doing, and also seeing to it that we create a sustainable development in Uganda. And the issue that we are talking about today is something that is in everyone's mind and everyone's lips, if I can say so: land. In fact, somebody told me that when they were born, the first word they learned was land. And I'm no expert in some of these issues, but I'll allow my guest today to introduce himself. And we delve deeply into this issue of land. Sir, you're welcome.
Thanks, Dixon. My name is Daniel Chirumira. I'm the team leader of the Responsible Land Policy in Uganda project, which is the country package under the Global Program Responsible Land Policy in Uganda. So in short, it's RELAPU, the project.
Before we delve deep into the RELAPU project, let's first talk about the land challenge. There are so many times we have seen people fighting here and there. Actually, not a day passes that you don't hear a conflict that has happened on something related to land. What are some of the challenges that land governance is? What are some of these challenges around land governance?
The obvious challenges, of course, pertain around the growing population in Uganda, some more than 40 million people. And these, of course, related to the fact that more than 70% of the land in Uganda is yet to be documented. Now, this creates a precarious situation for those that use and own land, being faced with problems, including with evictions or pressure that is brought about by investments in land or infrastructure development. And these impact on their livelihood in terms of food productivity, shelter, and other livelihood means. This context also comes in the related to the aspect of advocacy, where policy, while existing, the legal and policy framework while existing, it's not much known. And also the civic space around advocacy on tenure rights oftentimes is not reaching those that need to be reached with strengthening their awareness about their tenure rights. On the other hand, there are common investments in land, including by domestic investors as well as foreign direct investment that in certain instances operate in a manner that is not responsible and compliant to national as well as international frameworks. So this aggravates, you could say, the complicated situation where communities or households don't have documented tenure rights.
Documented tenure rights, it moves towards governance. So why is land governance such a big issue in Uganda?
Land governance is a big issue in Uganda, primarily because most communities are in the production sector, eking out a living from tilling the land, and anything that impacts negatively on their ownership or use of the land, and in various contexts. In the center, it's a different context with occupancy land rights. In the north, there are post-conflict situations with the Lord Resistance Army, with people or communities returning from internally displaced people's camps. In West Nile, it's also an interesting dynamic there with customary landholders or the host communities not owning tenure documents evidencing their ownership of land. And on the other hand, with the influx of refugees from DRC Congo and from South Sudan. So all of those aspects, including, for instance, in Karamoja region, also a different context with mineral exploration, all of these pressures create land governance issues to those that use and own rights or derive their livelihood from land.
So to the common man, they usually call that Omuntu Wawansi. To the common man, how does this, all the context you're telling me in northern Uganda, in Karamoja, and all these places, to the common man in practical terms, how do these challenges affect the common person, the smallholder farmer, the rural community?
For the rural household, oftentimes they are not aware about which procedures and to which institutions they ought to go to be able to get a land service that results into them securing a tenure document. On the other hand, access to finance is severely impacted or you could say constrained because many financial institutions oftentimes will require evidence for the place where a particular person interested in accessing credit from them is farming. Uh, on the other hand, of course, then aspects of women land rights and youth access and use and derivation of the yields from the land that they have tilled. So all of these aspects really evolve around the avenues through which communities and households access land and hold land, and oftentimes issues around or conflicts or challenges that affect them are, you could say, aggravated in such situations when they don't have any documents or evidence to the fact that they have use rights or, in addition, ownership rights to the land.
Now that we have clearly seen the challenges, and to be honest, they have been grave, how has RELAPU been able to address these challenges? What was the approach?
RELAPU, which is implemented under the Global Program Responsible Land Policy, is commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and in some components is co-financed by the European Union delegation. And RELAPU introduced approaches in which to help households, rural smallholder households, to resolve issues that they are faced on a day-to-day basis regarding their use rights and ownership rights. And the very first aspect that needed to be addressed over the 10-year implementation of the project since 2016 entailed creating awareness around what are the rights, what are the responsibilities, and what are the restrictions or obligations that each and every household member needs to be mindful of. And this is quite pertinent because then with the awareness, communities knew where to access land services. They knew which rights are due to them, either as occupants or customary owners, or even refugees. And that is a critical aspect that then formed the basis upon which communities would be engaged in the next steps. Capacity building of the mandated institutions was quite critical in regards to training from the sub-county level area land committee members, training district land office members, training together with the Ministry of Land's technical staff to enable that all the stakeholders mandated in the land administration of tenure rights are strengthened in their knowledge and in their capacities and in the retooling for them to allow to be able to go and strengthen or offer land services to the communities. On the basis then of the capacity built through trainings and equipping at the sub-counties, mapping teams constituted by those mandated at the sub-county level and the district level moved to the villages where awareness had been raised within the communities, mapping from parcel to parcel, from boundary to boundary, using fit-for-purpose technologies and approaches, allowing that no individual household would be left behind in terms of the strengthened tenure rights. Upon the documentation of a particular household or within a village, there would be data quality control to ensure that the standards that are required by the Partner Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development are met for the subsequent steps. And on the basis of quality controlled data, land data, the farmers would be issued with land documents so that they would have evidence for their ownership and use of the land that they have.
For those who have joined us, thank you. And for those online, please do remember to note your questions. We have an administrator here who will be able to relay the questions, and we shall be able to answer them accordingly. Like I said, this is an open space for peer learning, and most of the things that we're talking about here and most of the questions that you have, please do remember to note them down, and my guest today will be able to accommodate and answer them. You mentioned something very important, fit for purpose. It's a very interesting term. How does that work practically on the ground?
There is, Dixon, a technical definition for fit for purpose, but I like to present it or speak about it in an easy, not very technical way that is usually used. Yeah. So fit for purpose, you could understand it, or I could speak about it as an approach or a technology, oftentimes a digital approach, which is created to suit the particular purpose that one intends to achieve. So looking first at the purpose, what is intended, and then designing a tool that allows that purpose is achieved. Now, in land documentation or tenure land governance, designing fit for purpose tools and technologies entails that you look at what is the nature of the tenure and design then tools that suit that purpose for strengthening that tenure. In the Central region, we designed and used a slightly different technology and approach compared to that was used under customary tenure, for instance. In terms of course, using tablet computers and GNSS receivers or global navigation satellite system, that is what is GIS or GNSS receivers. These receivers were distinct, those used in the Central region compared to those used in the North. But for a particular reason, because the purpose in the Central region for occupancy land rights was that the fit for purpose approach and technology necessitated that the use rights and the occupancy rights in the Central region are juxtapositioned or superimposed, or the easier term, overlaid over already registered tenure rights of the Milo landlords. In the North, customary land owners had previously not been documented before. And that necessitated that you could say slightly different tools in terms of the receivers were used then or relied on to achieve documentation of tenure rights, mapping out from boundary to boundary for each household the portions that they would declare to the land administration institutions like the sub-county area land committee, where they use and own, with their neighbors being present. Now, these tools and approaches are distinct or different from the conventional documentation, for instance, the mapping of roads or mapping of land parcels in the urban area where the land value is much higher. So fit for purpose then comes in to allow that the service can be offered to smallholders at such a cost in terms of the logistical inputs that allows that subsequently, for instance, the farmers could even contribute to that service being issued to them.
You've kept on, most of the words are quite difficult, but there's one word I've been picking: documentation, land documentation, which is quite important. Let's explore that on the ground. How does it work on the ground?
The land documentation essentially primarily was only for those land parcels declared by smallholder farmers together with their household members in the presence of their neighbors, only if they were free of conflict. Now, this is one particular aspect that I hadn't, you could say, pointed out earlier, that it was quite critical that after awareness raising, all the grievances that were existing were mediated out of court. And that is quite critical to allow that access to justice related to land rights is achievable and accessible for smallholders without going through the lengthy and rather costly litigation processes. Now, on the basis of free of conflict, free prior informed households about the approaches, then mapping teams constituted at the lowest land administration structure or level, which is the sub-county with area land committees, would move out to the villages and the communities in the presence of local authorities and traditional authorities like clan leaders, local authorities like the local council one chairpersons. Area land committee members would then constitute themselves into teams of 3 to 4 persons and move out into the communities to each household. And then the household would declare, show the boundary points and the extents of each individual household parcel that they owned. And with the technologies that the GIZ implemented project were providing to the mandated stakeholders or structures at the sub-county and the district, they did document and capture each coordinate point that was shown by those that held or owned or declared that they have a use right or ownership right over that individual parcel. And on the basis of that data, then maps were created showing entire parishes, and these maps then would be displayed within the villages to allow that the community members themselves, the households themselves, validate 3 key aspects. And no court or individual can validate those aspects aside from those who own the tenure rights. And they would validate, is it the right boundaries that I know are my personal? They validated, is my name or my household members reflected within the parcel that we know is the parcel that we use and own? And then they would validate, am I placed in the right position where I know that particular members are my neighbors? So they would validate those key 3 aspects. And on the basis of that, then either corrections would be made based on the remarks given from the community members. And if no remarks or corrections upon making the corrections, if any, were necessitated, then documents would be printed out through support to the sub-county local authorities to print out the documents and then issue them to the smallholders. Now, the documents vary in Uganda based on the region. The overall start of document that was issued upon documentation with the support of the project, was the Land Inventory Protocol. Now, this was a creation or invention of the GIZ implemented project, the Land Inventory Protocol, as a basis then for having clarified the land use rights. Then that would form the basis for the pursuance or application of certificates of occupancy in northern Uganda, including West Nile in the Teso region, as well as Lango and Acholi region, and the issuance of certificates of occupancy in the central region, as these are mandated or specified within the Land Act for issuance to those that occupy land. Those are the three main documents, but in certain areas, it was not uncommon that after the inventory of tenure rights and the basis of awareness created, the farmers then would seek to negotiate, for instance, in the central region, to negotiate full rights by sharing the land, the inventorized land with the landlord to get a full title at the end of the day, or to negotiate to buy out and not be encumbered by having one owning the land while they are using a portion of that land. In West Nile, in Terego and Madiokolo districts, in partnership with ZOA International, we did support various stakeholders, including the Office of the Prime Minister, UNHCR, ZOA, and a couple of other stakeholders for refugees to be supported to negotiate formal tenancy agreements together with the host customary landowners. Now, this was quite critical because tenancy agreements in the refugee context allow that refugees can have more resilience, can have more reliance for their livelihood through use of land that is accessible outside the refugee camps. And I wish to share, as I share this aspect, a story of Jen Awate, who expressed really gratitude for a formal tenancy agreement. And Jen was really affected in the sense that her husband, who used to fend for the household, had passed on, and she had to fend and provide for the family, for her household. And she interacted with the customary landowner, who then negotiated and they agreed on a formal land rental agreement. Jen, of course, is a refugee and a widow, like I mentioned, that her husband had passed on. And she negotiated with the customary owning landlord for a formal tenancy agreement, which allowed that she could farm for longer, for a bigger portion, with security that she would be able to harvest her harvest fully from the land that is rented without the potential constraint of someone, you could say, constraining and removing or damaging her crop and her yields. And this really was quite beneficial, not only to Jane, but her household as well, in terms of the self-reliance beyond the direct or general food assistance that is offered through the refugee response.
So just like Jane, this is an issue of equity and access to land. How has RELAPU been able to address issues of gender and inclusion, which is, most of the societies that we live in, especially in Uganda, are patriarchal by nature. So how, and issues of land sometimes are in tandem with patriarchal issues. How has RELAPU been able to address gender and inclusion?
Gender is a critical issue, like you mentioned, Dixon. RELAPU did all the various stages that I mentioned: awareness, grievance settlement, documentation, endeavor to see that women are integrated and that all those processes are inclusive. And one critical aspect regarding awareness entailed that women would be encouraged to attend awareness raising sessions so they would know which rights are due to them as per the law, including succession rights, including the rights to derive the produce for land that they are using. And awareness necessitated that the civil society partners that we engaged to go out to the communities and create awareness needed and ensured that they arranged awareness raising sessions in a varied manner using various media, including community based meetings, allowing that the awareness raising sessions are organized at such a time that women would be able to attend. And oftentimes these awareness raising sessions would happen in the afternoon to allow that women are attending as well, in addition to the rest of the community members. Grievance resolution, out of court settlement of land related disputes really ensured that women were not left behind in terms of access to justice, including mediating grievances that were within households affecting the use and ownership rights of women. In terms of awareness, also, community members, and particularly men, were encouraged to document their tenure rights, including their spouses. And this is quite critical, that the rights of women were not left only to the protection under the succession laws, but allowing that the names of spouses and family, other family members that are either women or girls would be included on, for instance, certificates of customary ownership, to allow that they are not left behind. Grievances that would affect women were particularly addressed, allowing that they, women folk, would have a forum to present grievances that impacted on, one, their ownership of land, their succession of land, as well as the use of the land that they were either farming or had built a house on. So, so both awareness and grievance settlement ensured that women were not left behind in terms of access to justice and access to land, and then further strengthened with encouraging community members to include female family members onto the land documents that were issued then by the mandated authorities.
So somebody like Jane has accessed land. She now owns the land. But there's the component of responsible use, responsible land investment. Let's talk about that. Why is responsible land investment such an important component of this project?
Investments in land, like I said earlier, bring pressures on land, and particularly undocumented land rights, in regards to social safeguards, including the the pushing off of land for those that are not documented. And it's much easier to push off someone who's yet to be documented because they don't have any evidence. Now that is a social safeguard that you could say is violated. And it's mandated within not only international principles like the Community Forward Food Security, Responsible Agriculture Investment Principles, but national laws as well. So investments in land, which was a component that was funded under the European Union co-funded component, the Responsible Agriculture Responsible Governance of Investments in Land project component. Capacities were built for three main stakeholder categories: for government stakeholders, including, for instance, the National Environment Management Authority, Uganda Investment Authority, the various district local governments, the Ministry of Lands. We worked also together with the Ministry of Labor, Gender, and Social Development to strengthen the awareness about national as well as international guidelines. Investments in land affect also, you could say, oftentimes might not be practiced in such a manner that respects social safeguards, or rather environmental safeguards, entailing, for instance, constraining access to natural resources like water, or constraining and restricting passage. And we interacted with some investors, for instance, who had blocked off access through their farms, constraining access, for instance, to water from boreholes or from spring wells by the communities. Social safeguards also entail the respect for labor rights, including the rights to allow children to be in school during school time, and to allow that children are protected against hazardous activities that happen also, including investments in agriculture. You can mention, for instance, the spraying of herbicides or pesticides can severely affect unprotected laborers, and even more, unaware, unprotected, not only workers, but even those that are not meant to do certain tasks, like children. So we created awareness on environmental and social safeguards in that regard to investors and to government authorities, and also initiated a compliance, an investment compliance monitoring tool on the basis of the Responsible Agriculture Investment Principles, to allow that there is a checklist for a periodic assessment by government authorities assessing investors on their compliance levels against the environment and social safeguards. So investments in land were quite critical, and the implementation of the Responsible Land Policy in Uganda project. And we worked throughout together with investors very closely, capacitating them and introducing the investment compliance monitoring tool, not only for them to wait for mandated government institutions, for instance, the environment officer or the community development officer coming to them and checking on their compliance, but also to self-assess themselves against those principles. And maybe I could add that this was, you could say, an interesting linkage then with the subsequent new GIZ project, which is the Sustainable Forestry Systems, the SAFE project, which essentially is capacitating, you could say, one value chain, at least in Uganda, which is the coffee value chain, capacitating the stakeholders there on primarily the social safeguards, allowing that there's, you could say, there's traceability and compliant, ideally, rather it's on the environment safeguard, allowing that there's compliance in terms of avoidance of depletion of forests. And I think this was a good, the responsible agriculture investments capacities built for government and investors as well as communities were a good basis then for the introduction of the CEF project. And there are strong, you could say, interdependencies or linkages with RGIL, which is the Responsible Governance of Investments project component, which we concluded in 2023 together with the now ongoing CEF project.
Wow, that's quite elaborate. I would still like to remind those who are online to keep the question coming, and those who are in house to note down a thing or two that you'll be able to ask us after this interview. And Daniel, like you can see, will be able to adequately answer you. RELAPU has been running for over 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. What are some of the tangible benefits that you've seen?
RELAPU has achieved quite significant results over the years since 2016, and more than 111,000 households have been reached with documented tenure rights. And this, for us, we are very proud about this contribution with the support under the BMZ Commission, as well as the European Union co-funding. RELAPU did achieve, like I mentioned, the awareness and resolution of grievances that affect women. RELAPU did achieve that 42% of women were either documented as individual owners of the parcels that they use and own, or as joint owners together with their spouses. And this is quite heartwarming also, the contribution. And I would add that more than 130,000 hectares of land were documented through the years that we have been collaborating with the ministry, the partner Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and the various district local governments in 13 districts. Over that period, and like I mentioned, it's only on the basis of awareness and resolved grievances that then we subsequently documented the tenure rights of smallholders. 82% of grievances were documented and resolved out of court. And that this is quite significant because it's quite distinct from going through the formal judicial litigation of grievances in land, which takes not only resources, but it takes quite some time in terms of the time that someone would be engrossed in seeking justice through the formal judicial system. So 82% grievances mediated successfully with the input of local authorities, community members, and traditional authorities.
With all these achievements, you're talking of 82%. The big question is around sustainability. How do we not lose all that we've worked so hard for?
Thanks. We ensured under the implementation that primarily those mandated to create awareness, those mandated to resolve grievances, those mandated to document tenure rights, those mandated to monitor the compliance levels of investments against environment and social safeguards or principles were the ones doing the actual work. So they were capacitated in terms of skills trainings, and then retooled or tooled, availed computers, tablets, GNSS receivers to allow that they would execute their mandate. So we ensured at all the various steps that capacities were institutionalized, allowing that those mandated under the law, like the Land Act or the Local Government Act, were the ones offering services to communities to allow that, including after the end of the project, which is this very month, uh, that smallholders that were yet to be reached could approach the sub-county for resolution of a grievance or approach the sub-county for their tenure rights to be documented. We ensured that with the use of digital approaches, the fit-for-purpose approach that I talked about, that the data was of good enough quality that it could be integrated within the Uganda National Land Information System. Now that is quite critical because not only the issuance of documents to a smallholder allows for full transparency on who owns the land, because essentially, for instance, a responsible investor would approach the land office and seek that they clarify who is owning and using a particular piece of land. Now, for a farmer, for a smallholder farmer to be protected, they need for their land rights to be reflected within the National Land Information System. So data integration was quite critical also in that regard. We did introduce during the project implementation that based on the high interest from smallholders to have their tenure rights strengthened, we leveraged that high interest that the farmers could contribute then also to the service being issued for them to achieve a land document that depicts that they own and use a particular portion of land within their villages or within their communities. Now, this was dubbed self-financing, allowing that smallholders could contribute to the sub-county level and to the district for them to achieve a land service, allowing that some of the services that the project primarily was supporting initially, for instance, the sittings of the area land committee and the sittings of the district land board, the transport to the field by the area land committees to create awareness, to resolve grievances, and to document the tenure rights, could be part financed by the contributions from the farmers. So that was quite significant also. And lastly is we did within the rural development program endeavor that we could have integrated programming with the sister rural development projects, particularly PRODEV in Lango and Acholi region, where we worked to create awareness within the PRODEV supported farmer cooperatives to allow that farmer cooperative members could have their tenure rights strengthened. And this was also a benefit to the cooperative because the cooperatives seek that their member farmers are compliant as well, or the cooperative is compliant and it has social and environmental safeguards addressed for their member farmers, including secure tenure rights. Because for a cooperative, they need their farmer really vibrantly producing, and the farmer whose tenure rights are affected or weak risks that they won't be producing at some point because of a land conflict, for instance, or because of an eviction. So we did work with the ProDev project to strengthen awareness and documented tenure rights for member farmers that constituted themselves within farmer cooperatives. And in Teso region, we also had integrated programming together with the Civil Peace Program, which had prior already was working in the post-conflict situation. And RELAPU did come in to strengthen the contributions of interest groups that are supported under the Civil Peace Program, allowing that conflicts would not only be resolved like the Civil Peace Program was already engaging before RELAPU, but that on the basis of resolved conflicts, tenure rights could be then documented. And under this integrated programming, we are very hopeful and optimistic that documentation of tenure rights could continue, including with other ongoing programs like the civil PRUDEV as well as the Civil Peace Service.
You mentioned that the project has run its natural course and it will end at the end of this month. When you sit back and reflect, what are some of those lessons that you've learned? And I know we have not done this alone. What are some of also those institutions that we have collaborated with that you would, look at favorably?
Aside, of course, from the much welcomed support from the commissioning party, which is the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the European Union, which co-financed both the improvement of land governance in Uganda project component, which was implemented in the central region, as well as the responsible governance of investments in land project component. We worked closely and very much appreciative of the cooperation that we had with the political partner Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. And at the lower level, because subsequently also the Local Government Act mandates that district local governments and sub-county local governments under them are responsible also for offering land services to community members. We did collaborate with 13 districts and very encouraged by the collaboration that we had, the positive collaboration that we had with the 13 district local governments. In the central region, 6 district local governments in Teso, 2 to 3 district local governments in Lango, 2 districts, and in Acholi, 2 districts as well. In West Nile, we worked with 2 districts as well, Madiokolo and Terego. And these partnership and collaboration with the district local governments was quite instrumental to the achievements that I mentioned earlier. We did collaborate with quite a number of civil society organizations because of their critical role in advocacy for tenure rights, policy advice and dialogue with the political policy responsible ministries. So we worked with CSOs on resolving grievances and with creating awareness within the communities. And subsequently, the CSOs also, their capacities to implement responsible land policy in line with international guidelines and the national frameworks were strengthened over the implementation period. We collaborated with financial institutions and their member umbrella organization, the Uganda Bankers Association, in respect of access to finance. I hadn't mentioned access to finance earlier because we built capacities and we strengthened dialogue around the strengthened tenure rights for smallholders, graduating, and then also supporting easier access for finance with financial institutions, commercial banks, or micro credit lending institutions. In that regard, we did achieve quite some groundbreaking results, including, for instance, farmers accessing credit based on land inventory protocols, accessing credit based on their certificates of occupancy. So this was quite significant achievement with that collaboration with financial institutions.
Your parting shots, but before you give us your parting shots, do we have any questions? Your parting shots. What needs to happen in Uganda for responsible land governance?
What is critical and what would be my parting shots, and This was a learning from the implementation over the 10 years since 2016, that it's critical, or for us, it was a strong learning that it was important to introduce the contribution by farmers through self-financed land services from the start. Because once a project is bankrolled and there are no contributions either from the partners or the farmer beneficiaries, there is over-reliance on the support of the project, which then you could say constrains some of the continuity that ought to happen after the implementation of the project. So this was a critical learning for us, and on that basis, then we strengthened the capacities for local governments to create awareness for self-financed or contributions from smallholders towards their land being documented, and for the transparent management of these funds once they were collected by the local authorities from the farmers seeking that their land is documented. And this was quite critical, also including the evolving role of CSOs or civil society organizations in respect to creating advocacy around the transparent use of those funds collected from farmers for land services, so that they are managed in a transparent manner that results into the farmers actually receiving a document at the end of the day, as opposed to the funds being lost to something else. The involvement of government technical staff in not only capacity building for lower level structures, with the ministry staff training at the district and district staff subsequently training the mandated stakeholders at the sub-county, was quite critical. And this was also a learning that we needed to change at some point, that these allowed for a better sustaining of capacities within the mandated institutions. Institutionalizing the monitoring of results was quite critical, and an important learning for us, that it's more impactful that the local governments are also keen on monitoring the results in terms of how many farmers have received awareness raising within their jurisdiction, how many grievances have been documented, and how many of those documented have been resolved, and those that are yet to be resolved, as this is their regular mandate in terms of the permanent cooperation that they have with the communities, vis-a-vis the temporary cooperation that GIZ brings in during the project timeframe. Monitoring the number of documents that have been issued to allow they can monitor also the coverage of those land rights that have been strengthened vis-a-vis those that are yet to be reached within their jurisdiction. So this was a learning that the partner local governments could take interest and in the lead of monitoring the results as well, in line with their key performance indicators.
Thank you, Daniel. But before we get you off the hot seat, I believe there are certain questions online and even in the building. Andrew, please. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, we have two questions. One is from Robert. Robert is asking, from the onset in 2016, how has the RELAPU project evolved into a program that it has become to date, and as it now comes to a conclusion? Should I read the second question?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, the second question is from Susan. What is the most significant change or footprint that the project has left behind in the areas of operation?
Thank you. Yes, you're still stuck in the hot seat. Take it away.
thank you, the online audience, for those questions. How did the project evolve over the period? The project was initially implemented in Teso region, and utilizing the BMZ funding, and subsequently with the co-financing from the European Union. There were two phases of the improvement of land governance project in the central region, which allowed that the initial three districts that were supported, Mubende, Kasanda, Mitiana, then three additional districts were added in the follow-on phase, adding Chiboga, Gomba, and Butambala districts, which allowed, you could say, that more farmers, more local authorities could be supported with the initiative of strengthening occupancy rights. Subsequently, the project also evolved in regards to moving from Teso and spreading out then to cover, in Teso, of course, the collaboration with the Civil Peace Program, and with additional funding from BMZ that allowed that the project could benefit also customary land holders in the PRUDEV project intervention areas in Lango and in Acholi, and in particular the districts of Dokolo and Amolata, and Gulu and Pader in Acholi. So this is how the project was evolving. I wouldn't say it did evolve into a program. It did evolve, you could say, in terms of scaling to additional districts with additional funding from the commissioning party, BMZ, and also the scaling up in West Nile, I must add, to add the land refugee nexus and make contributions then for the self-reliance of refugees and strengthen tenure rights for the customary land-holding host communities. So this is how the project was evolving. It was implemented over the years under the Global Program Responsible Land Policy. So it wasn't bilateral cooperation, but under a global program. Initially, the special initiative, One World Without Hunger, and now the current initiative, the transformation of agriculture and food systems. So this is my response to the first question. And how did one significant change that the project did bring is that over the years, we were primarily implementing the Uganda National Land Policy that was passed by Cabinet in 2013. Over the implementation period, we did not only, you could say, have interventions at the micro level with strengthening awareness, resolving grievances, and documenting smaller tenure rights, but at the meso level with capacities built for 13 local governments, allowing that those capacities could enable that these local authorities could continue and can have the knowledge and the capacities to continue documenting tenure rights beyond the sub-counties within their jurisdiction, rather beyond the sub-counties that we reached, to include other sub-counties within their jurisdiction. And the significant change was at that level was the level of capacities and the strengthened capacities at all levels, which we referred to as a capacity building cascade, allowing that there are master trainers at the ministry level, including with master trainers with other organizations like the UN Habitat or CODAID, which is a Dutch-funded land governance project implemented there by CODAID, the EGRIP project. So this was quite significant. And at the macro level, what was significant was that the learnings over the 10-year implementation of the project significantly informed the review of the Uganda National Land Policy, which happened the past year, 2025, with support, including with BMZ funding, support to the Partner Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, that the National Land Policy 2013 that the project supported with the implementation activities then informed the review of the policy strategies of government to allow that the national land policy can be reviewed and a new framework is issued by government, hopefully in the near future, on the basis of the validated, reviewed national land policy, which we supported the past year, which culminated in a validation workshop in December 2025.
Thank you. Do we have any more?
Yes, just one more question. Grace is asking, what is next with the RELAPU implementing partners?
Well, I mentioned, thanks Grace for that. I mentioned that we did emphasize that it was critical to undertake integrated programming with the sister rural development projects, allowing that activities could be undertaken together with partners, for instance, of the Civil Peace Program and partners of PRUDEV, which gives, you could say, hope that land governance measures will continue. On the other hand, with regards to civil society partners, the support that was accorded to them and their involvement in the implementation allowed that their implementation of responsible land policy is strengthened. And of course, some of them, and I could imagine, of course, the strength that they have allows that they can seek funding from other donors intervening in the land sector. And we have examples of such CSOs who have now, you could say, allowed or been able to access funding from other donors for additional land governance measures beyond the RELAPU implementation intervention areas. So, and in addition to that, of course, the hope is that civil society partners will continue to raise advocacy for tenure rights, to allow that the rest of the country is reached with strengthened, documented tenure rights, with resolved grievances out of court, and with strong awareness and knowledge about the familiarity on land rights, restrictions and obligations due to the smallholders throughout the country, to allow that essentially no Ugandan household is left behind with strengthened tenure rights.
No one is left behind. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us and sharing your insights and knowledge on land governance, responsible land governance in Uganda. To the audience out there, thank you for taking your time out, joining us today for the first of the knowledge series. Like you've seen, this is a series, and we shall be having a couple of more guests coming, joining us, sharing their knowledge, sharing their insights, and giving us, I can say, an indelible insight into what we do and improving basically our lives in whichever fields that we are in. Thank you once again, and until next time, we'll be having another session on coffee next week. So I do hope you take your time and again join us for this knowledge series. Thank you.